I have been to Target so many times this week. I have to tell you, I have been to Target so many times, I need an intervention. I'm thinking about leasing space and just moving there and just really saying the truth. It is my home. Okay, I sleep at my house, but my home really, it's Target. So I took the first trip to Target because we decided we would get a live Christmas tree this year for the first time. Our artificial tree, which we've used for a number of years in the past, is, why, it's right there! So we needed lights for the tree, and Jan wanted old school lights, you know, the ones as big as your fist that people used in the 60s, which is why we have global warming today. Since we have no environmental awareness whatsoever, we went right to Target, trip number 1, to get those and bring them home, and discover that 2 strands are not enough. We need a 3rd strand, and so I go back, trip number 2, and get the 3rd strand. I bring the 3rd strand home, drop it on the floor, and discover that the old school bulbs are not plastic, they're ceramic, and they break. So one of them is now broken, and we plug this in, and it shorts out the entire string. Which renders my 3rd trip to Target, which was for 1 replacement bulb, null and void, because that bulb does not fix a completely shorted out string. And so I go back for the 4th trip and bring home what we actually need, and this time we're converting all of our strands of lights indoor to white wires instead of, you know, the green. So I bring it all home on trip number 4 and discover that 50% of what I brought home in my white plastic Target bag is actually still green lights. I just thought they were white, but they're not, which sets up trip number... I have been to Target a lot, I'm telling you. And I've got to tell you, I know Target pretty well now. I really do. And it is much more than just a big box retailer. It is a university. You don't really need to go to Cal at all. Everything you need to know about culture in this country, about life itself, you can learn at Target. No, you don't even have to work there. Just shop there as regularly as I do, and you'll pick it all up. And what I learned about Target was that there are some aspects of the Christmas story that translate really well into our pop culture. So if you walk through Target a lot, what you're going to see is trees and angels and stars and Santa, and trees and angels and stars and Santa, and trees and angels and stars and Santa, over and over and over and over. Because those are the aspects of the story that can be monetized for retail. There's just sort of one person who's kind of MIA in all of the trees and Santa, which suggests to me that there are also parts of the story that don't translate into pop culture very well because they can't be monetized. And one of those is at the very beginning of Matthew's account of the birth of Jesus. And it's this long section, you know the parts of the Bible you skip? It's this long section that is the genealogy of Jesus as told backwards through his legal father, Joseph, beginning with Abraham, the person with whom God made the original promise to redeem the world. And you run down through all of these verses and you think, I have never seen a greeting card that contains the ancestry of Jesus, because putting all the names in would fill up your whole Kindle. The greeting card would be 3 feet thick. You'd never even be able to get it home. But it's something that is vitally important in Matthew's record of the birth of Jesus because origins really matter. Now, in my family, my sister-in-law Judy is our genealogist. She's the one who has actually gone as far as traveling to Europe to discover the roots of the family. And of course, they're, you know, scattered all over the place like all of ours are. And so about once every, I'll say 3 months, she sends us a big fat envelope full of newsletters and pictures and charts and graphs. Have you noticed this, that people who are into genealogy are really into it? They have a religious devotion to it. So recently, in fact, this is the latest present we've gotten, the latest fat packet of photos that came. We received a picture that had my wife in it in childhood. Now, can you tell which one she is? She appears here with a number of her cousins from the Dakotas. Can you pick her out?
The one all the way on the right.
She's the fourth from your right.
Got it.
Yes, Randy got it. Very good. She's the busy, distracted one playing with the foreign object. Yes. Isn't she cute? So we get these pictures, and you think, oh, that's cute. But the reason it's significant to Judy is this is our history. This is our ancestry. These are the people who have come down the family tree. Actually, this is a pretty big branch of the family tree right there. Those are just some of the cousins from one family. And this is really deeply meaningful to Judy, who is the older sister of Jan's immediate family, and will continue to send us these wonderful records probably as long as she's alive, because origins really matter to people. Knowing where you come from is a big part of knowing what you're about and who you are. It situates you in history, and Matthew is doing exactly that. He's saying, before we get to the trees and the Santa, the angels, and the greeting card, before we get to the part that monetizes well, let's put Jesus somewhere in history, in some family, and more important than anything, let's make sure that my readers, who are largely going to be drawn from the Jewish context, are convinced that this person, Jesus of Nazareth, meets all the criteria to be not only a descendant of Abraham and a descendant of King David, but meets the criteria for being the Messiah, the anointed one, the Savior of the whole world, the King of everything. And so he does that by answering the question, where did Jesus come from? From whose people? And from what family tree did he emerge? And so the first verse of Matthew's account begins this way. It says, describing itself, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Now that phrase, the book of the genealogy, can literally be translated the table of the genealogy, in the same way that you would use the phrase the table of elements or a table of contents. So it's sort of meant for memorization and recognition by being put into a really easy to grasp pattern. Now I have a 4-dot ellipse up here, and you English majors know that when there are 4 dots, it means there's a whole bunch left out. And what goes on in those 4 dots is really pretty simple. Matthew is tracing the descent of Jesus starting from Abraham up 2,000 years until the birth of Christ, and he does it this way. He begins with Abraham, then lays out 14 generations up to King David. Abraham's about 2,000 years prior to Jesus' birth. David, roughly 1,000 years. And then between David and the exile of the Jewish people in Babylon, there's another 14 generations. And then from the Babylonian exile to Jesus, there's another 14 generations. 42 times Matthew says, was the father of, was the father of, was the father of, or if you're old school, begat, 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 begat. Do you see why it's not in your greeting cards at Target? It just doesn't translate. Now, why all the 14s? Well, the best bet that we have from biblical scholarship is that in Hebrew numerology, the name David adds up to 14. And so probably that was a memory aid and a way of also conveying the idea that Jesus is a direct linear descendant of David. 42 is an awful lot of generations, but isn't nearly enough to cover the 2,000 years of history we're talking about. But then no Jewish reader of the 1st or 2nd century would have expected every single name to be included. The genealogies are set up selectively. They're kind of a highlight reel, condensed into 14 generations in each segment, just as Matthew's audience would expect them to be. And so at the end of that, what you have is Abraham, 14 to David, 14 to the exile, 14 to Jesus, and 42 different people begatting other people. And at the end of that, verse 17 says this. So all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations. And from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations. And from the deportation to Babylon to Christ, 14 generations. Man, that's a lot of generations. Can't we get directly to the stars and the angels and the trees and the Santa? And the stars and the angels and the trees and the Santa. This is the part I skip over in my devotional reading. I don't want anything to do with people begatting and begodding and begatting and begodding. But sometimes the things that seem the least important to us superficially are the most important parts of the story. Jesus comes from somewhere. He drops into human history as the product of a 2,000-year extended family, just the way you've dropped into history. You've come from somewhere, and you're the product of everything that's brought you up to this moment. Now, the other really great thing about Christmas is all the new movies. Can I get a hearty amen from the house? Yes, it's okay. You can say it out loud. It's all right. It's all right. Or as you know, you can say "Go Bears" if that's your preference. New movies roll out because they figure at Christmas time nobody's paying attention to how much they spend. And they also figure in Hollywood that you've got extra time, you're off on vacation. Lots of people are going out on dates, and so movies make a whole lot of sense because there's cash and time available to do big premieres. And of course, romantic comedies are huge at Christmas time because lots of people get engaged and people think this is a romantic time, and those are sort of great date movies if you're not a man, and they're really, they're fun, and millions of people go, and there are billions of dollars that say that this is a good call. And so all of these things roll out, and we've noticed over the years, I have seen more romantic comedies probably than any man alive. This is how much I love this woman. This is my offering to her, is seeing these films. And I'll tell you what, just like going through Target, you can learn a lot from these movies. The one thing you see in these films is that they virtually all, at Christmas time, feature a dinner scene. Yeah, you know the ones, I mean, like Four Christmases, Vince Vaughn, Reese Witherspoon, any Hugh Grant movie has at least 9 dinner scenes. And the point of the dinner scene is really simple. It is you get all these goofy, dysfunctional, insane characters who are completely whacked out on their own, and you pool their wackiness over a turkey. And you put somebody like Chevy Chase or someone at the end of the table, and the bird doesn't turn out right, and there's a food fight, and Grandma is drunk, and so she falls down and puts her face in the mashed potatoes, and Hugh Grant says something clever, the girl across the table falls in love with him by candlelight, and it just all goes kind of crazy. But the truth of the matter is, you don't need to go to the movies to know that this is true. You just need to go to your house and have any holiday dinner. You know those people. They say rude things. They make rude noises. Some of them show up and they've had too much to drink, or they're, like weird Uncle Ned who only eats the yams. It's just odd. He drools just a little bit, tells the same stories over and over and over that you remember from last Thanksgiving. It's this wild, crazy. It's as if this is like God's joke on us, Christmas dinner. It's as if you take all the dysfunctions of people, which are horrific individually, and you pool them for 2 hours to make them catastrophic collectively, and this is Christmas dinner. But hey, it's family. So you just power up your shields, shields on maximum, sir, and you just get through it, and you come out the other end, and when you look back, that's kind of part of what makes it fun. Is it not? Everybody's so perfect, In a way, it's kind of a relief because you look around and you say, "Man, I can make it among these people. I'm actually all right compared to this bunch." It's kind of a good feeling. And this made me wonder: what if we took that little phrase translated more literally, the table of genealogy, and took it in a different way? What if we invited the people in the genealogy to Christmas dinner? And the table of the genealogy was bumps in it that nobody really knows what that is. In the dictionary next to the phrase foreign substance, there's a little picture of that stuff in Mom's gravy. The croissant rolls, the ones that used to be this big that now are down to about that big. You know, the pumpkin pie and that green bean casserole with those crunchy canned onion rings that you only buy once a year for that green bean casserole. There's Jell-O there with mandarin oranges or maybe carrot slivers, you know, and pumpkin pies are cooking, and somebody is sharpening the knife to carve the turkey, and all the Diet Pepsi with lemon or lime as your preference has all been poured and gathered around the Christmas table. The ancestors of Jesus, the table of his genealogy. And way down there at the far end, there's an old man sitting named Abraham. Abraham, the great hero of the faith. Abraham, who was married to Sarai, who laughed at God's promise that they would have a child very late in life. Abraham, about whom the New Testament says on this issue was, quote, as good as dead. Here's Abraham, the great hero, the one who sold his own wife to other men on 2 different occasions to protect his own life. Abraham, the great hero. Oh, Abraham, we're so glad you made it this year, Abraham. Without your sterling example, what would the rest of us do? Without the way you really know how to show a girl a good time. You're in danger? Hey, if you'll spare me, I'll give you my wife. Oh, man, who would have thought of it? What problem-solving skills? Who would have thought of a solution like that? No wonder you're the patriarch. No wonder you're the one that God picked out to give the original promise to. You've got this amazing life. Abraham, thank goodness you made it this year. We're so glad. And a few people down to him on Abraham's right, there's Judah, one of his descendants. Judah had all those brothers. Must be great to be from a big family like that. Big family, it's like the Waltons or something, you know, just big, happy, bustling family that must have been really, really awesome, except for that whole Joseph incident. He had that coat, you know, had a lot of colors, you know, dressed like a pimp, walking down the street. Oh, man. Had dreams, told his dreams. Dreams are all about God lifting him up. Maybe the other brothers not so much. The crew got together, the brothers, dragged him out, left him for dead, threw him in a hole. Slavers found him, picked him up, took him to Egypt. Next thing you know, bam, he's in prison. Judah, we're so glad you made it. Man, I said, there's nothing like family. There's nothing like family. You're so good at lifting people up and helping their dreams to come true. Man, you're a rock. You're a man. Without you around the table, it just wouldn't be Christmas, would it? We're so glad you're here. A few more people down. Here's Solomon, the great king of Israel. David's son, the wise one. The one who said, Lord, I don't want anything, just make me wise. And God poured wisdom into his life, and he gained power and status and wealth really like no one in the ancient world had ever seen. He was so famous that other ancient leaders came to him for solutions, for resources. He was the go-to guy among ancient monarchs. And then his wisdom turned sour, and he ended up with more wives than most people have shoes, and he became corrupt, and he accumulated wealth for its own sake, and he became idolatrous and abusive, and he went completely into the ditch. Solomon! Hey! Good to have you. I want you as my partner for the games later, because you're really smart. You've got all that wisdom. You and me together playing Clue or whatever, one of those crazy word games, or Pictionary or something. We are going to rule, man, because you are the smartest man who ever lived. I know you had some problems, but that's all right. We're so glad you made it. Man, it's wonderful to have you here. On the other side of the table, some of the girls are kept. Matthew's list is really powerful because it contains 5 women. They're really something. Tamar, prostitute. Rahab, prostitute. Hey girls, how's it going? So glad you all are here. And we just want you to stay way down on the other end of the table, okay? Away from the kids. Really, it's family, right? Right? So wonderful to have you all here. Thanks for that nice card. Appreciate that. Vegas must be lovely this time of year. Ruth, foreigner. Be the equivalent of an illegal immigrant today. She's not even technically part of our thing, you know? She's an outsider. Bathsheba, the victim of an abusive king, ends up committing adultery with him, ends up being an unwitting co-conspirator in murder with David. Good to see you, girl. So glad you made it. You're amazing. Love what you've done with your hair. Don't change a thing. Glad you're here. And of course, the capstone is Mary, the unwed teenage mother. How could a group of people like this be invited to sit at God's table? These are the people I would have covered up to roll out the others. And yet Matthew seems to shove them all to the front of the account as he traces the lineage through the family of Joseph that becomes the family into which Jesus would be born. How does that work? Well, one of the characters who's seated at the table, David, might give us an insight into that. At the beginning of his reign, about 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus, David learns that he will be king not because he's been elected, but because his predecessor, Saul, and Saul's son, Jonathan, his best friend, have been killed in battle. And by default, the shepherd boy who was anointed by the prophet Samuel finds himself in a position now to go from the back 40 to the throne. And when he does, one of the very first things that he implements as a policy is that he intends not to take revenge on the family of his predecessor, which would have been the practice in the ancient world. You would wipe out any competition. Instead of wiping them out, David decides that he's going to show extra kindness to the descendants of King Saul for the sake of his best friend Jonathan. That's how close the two of them were. And so David sends out the word throughout the land, are there any family members of Saul, specifically family members of Jonathan, my best friend, still alive? Are there any survivors of this battle that took the life of Saul and Jonathan? And a servant named Ziba comes to the king and says, yes, there is one. Jonathan has a son who is still alive. We've located him. Now, this son has 2 problems. One is his name is Mephibosheth. And no one can say that. That's problem 1.